Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Awaken to Wholeness Summit. I'm Val Silidker. We are launching the summit today with diving into the greatest story of our time, the universe story. We're going to be speaking with both Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm, as well as mathematical evolutionary cosmologist Brian Swimme. Dr. Brian Thomas Swimme is director of the Center for the Story of the Universe and a professor at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. He received his PhD from the Department of Mathematics at the University of Oregon in 1978 for work in gravitational dynamics. He brings the context of story to our understanding of the 13.7 billion year trajectory of the universe. Such a story, he feels, will assist in the emergence of a flourishing Earth community. Swimme is the author of one of my favorite books, The Hidden Heart of the Cosmos, and The Universe is a Green Dragon. He is co-author of The Universe Story, which is the result of the 10-year collaboration with cultural historian Thomas Berry, someone we're going to hear a lot about during the summit. Swimme is also the creator of 3 educational video series, Canticle to the Cosmos, The Earth's Imagination, and the Powers of the Universe. Most recently, he co-wrote and hosted the 60-minute film, Journey of the Universe, broadcast on PBS television stations nationwide. Brian Swimme, really, such
Hi,
an
Val.
honor. It's so exciting to have you here.
So glad to be here.
So glad to have you. Your work has literally informed so much of my life and my work and the depth of my own connection to the cosmos. And so I just want to start off by saying thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm great. Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like, this work and the reason why we're launching the summit with the universe story is because it is literally the deepest context, it's to hold us in understanding who we are on the most profound level and how we connect with everything around us. And I feel like from that space, we can talk about everything else. But it really begins by understanding that the consciousness from which we live our lives affects everything, determines, everything, creates this ripple effect into our world.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is the context, the universe itself, and what we've learned about it. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay. Awesome. So I feel like a great way to begin is I'd like to read a little something from the beginning of Journey of the Universe that's going to pretty much blow our minds right open, our hearts right open, and I think be a great entryway for us into the conversation.
Great.
With our empirical observations expanded by modern science, we are now realizing that our universe is a single immense energy event that began as a tiny speck that has unfolded over time to become galaxies and stars, palms and pelicans, the music of Bach, and each of us alive today. The great discovery of contemporary science is that the universe is not simply a place, but a story in which we are immersed, to which we belong, and out of which we arose. This story has the power to awaken us more deeply to who we are. For just as the Milky Way is the universe in the form of a galaxy, and an orchid is the universe in the form of a flower, we are the universe in the form of a human. We are the universe in the form of a human. And every time we are drawn to look up into the night sky and reflect on the awesome beauty of the universe, we are actually the universe reflecting on itself. And this changes everything. And I can tell you that the first time I actually was watching a documentary when I was in grad school, and I can't remember the name of it, but Sister Miriam McGillis was speaking words similar to that. We're the universe becoming aware of itself through the human form. And it was like, there was this moment that I'm already on this path, studying with Joanna Macy, feeling into myself as earth, right? Expanding that sense of self. And all of a sudden, this just broke me wide open. Like I got it. It was like the words to something that I always felt inside of me. And I was so excited. And I ran to my best friend at the time, who was also really into, you know, deep ecology with me and all this. And I was like, listen to this. We're the universe reflecting on itself. And he was like, cool. And I'm like, no. Wait, let me say that again. You know, it was like this big moment for me. And I don't feel like I got to really like, nobody just like did cartwheels with me in that moment. But for me, it was like the biggest, the next thing you know, I'm asking the Oracle about Miriam McGillis, leading me to Genesis Farm. And I ended up diving in for a month in the immersion of the new cosmology, the work of Thomas Berry and Brian Swimme. And that was, you know, over a decade ago. And it really set me on an incredible journey, an incredible awakening in so many ways. And so I want to start off by asking you how you felt the first time you got this in your life, or just that aha moment. What was that like for you? And then what does it all mean? What does that mean, really?
You know, when you speak, it brings it back. It's very similar for me in that when it really hit, there were two astonishing things. One was the nature of the universe itself. It's just so amazing. And the other astonishing thing was the fact that everyone wasn't just thinking about this all the time. I just couldn't believe when I finally realized what we now know. I couldn't believe that everything just kept moving forward like nothing had happened. So it was very similar to you, you know. But even that question of how is it that this understanding can penetrate into a human being, and then also what is it that might block it from penetrating in? And so really my life from that moment, that aha moment that you're describing, has been reflecting on that. How can I better tell the story so that it makes sense, so that it would get through. So we have all these layers in our consciousness. We talk about consumerism or materialism or a whole bunch of other things that we learn, and they keep us in a smaller frame of mind. So I really, that's all I think about. How did I had one moment of success, right? Was when my wife teaches second grade, and at this time she was teaching kindergarten, and she said, "Can you come in and tell the students the universe story?" And so I thought, here I am, and so they're 5-year-old kids, and there I am, and so I made up a little thing about how, all right, everyone, we're going to take off on a spaceship, and I want you to strap in now because we're going to take off, and so we launch off and bring them into the universe, and then so I'm finding a way to tell the story, and this one point, and I'm telling them, a star had to create elements inside of itself, one by one. And then when it blew up, it sent all of these elements out, and those elements gathered together, and we are formed from them. And there was one little kid in the class, and as I was saying this, he was reaching up and he was touching his cheek. Oh, it just melted me down. In that moment, he was realizing that he had come out of a star, it's just, yeah. So I think it's a colossal insight that is going to be penetrating into the human species and altering things in a very big way. So that is, my experience was very similar to yours, Val.
It's interesting that you mentioned that about the kindergarten children. I have a little boy. He's almost 3. And I read to him, there's a series that's The Universe Tells the Universe Story.
Yes.
For kids, I'm sure you know it.
Yes.
And there's another book called The Everything Seed.
I don't know that one.
This is so good. Anybody out there listening with children, The Everything Seed and The Universe Tells the Universe Story. The Universe Tells the Universe Story are 3 books that talk about the born with a bang, you know, the universe, literally the universe story, everything was created. And then it talks about Earth, and then it talks about life. Mammals that morph, I think it's called, the last one. And
Jennifer Morgan.
Yes, Jennifer Morgan, thank you. And it's an incredible 3-part series that speaks to children about the universe. And so my son's name is Sagan. I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
I love that.
Yes. So I'm a little obsessed, right? But yes, it keeps it in the forefront of our consciousness, you know? Yeah. But yeah, it's I think that is such a powerful way to begin, right? Because we're born into this culture of consumerism. Like you say, it's like a religion of consumerism, where we're taught from young children not to contemplate the mysteries of the universe, but to contemplate how things give us our self-worth, you know, and how we need more and more things. And so somehow along the way, you know, we here in the modern Western culture have lost sight of the magnificence of who we are. And I think, in a sense, the role of humans. Yes. And I'd love to invite you to speak a little bit about that. You know, how do we see the role of the human?
Well, that is really the ultimate question. It really is, because no matter what culture we're born into, the culture has an answer for that, and there are a variety of answers. And we usually don't ask the question. But it's there, and we've built our civilization around these questions. What's the role of the human? Now, there have been different approaches. We have Aristotle talking about a human being the rational animal, you know, and then there's the idea that we're the tool user, and that we're, so that we have different attempts. And I mean, it has to be said that right now, if you asked what is the role of the human in the universe, there is an answer. So I live in the United States of America, and our answer is it's something like our role is to educate ourselves, to learn an important skill, to become part of the workforce, and to build a comfortable life. I mean, it'd be something like that. But that alone isn't sufficient. One of the things, I was contacted by some computer companies, and one of their challenges is to keep the engineers with them. And what they're discovering is a kind of a widespread sense of meaninglessness. And these are people that are at the peak of the financial ladder. They're able to amass all kinds of money, but they themselves are left empty, because there has to be more than just earning a living and accumulating capital. So we sort of search around and ask, well, what is our ultimate meaning? And I came across an insight from Indians in South America, and they say simply this: you cannot become human unless you reflect upon the immensities of the universe. So that there's a connection there between just where we find ourselves and our ability to take in the majesty of the universe. So for me, that's getting at something that humans are really good at. We have been wandering around the planet Earth for hundreds of thousands of years, and we're only recently beginning to understand the billions of years that went into our moment of existence. So I would say that one way to start to ask that question again is, what does it mean that we humans are able to take in the fact that we are one of the end results of a billion-year process? Maybe it's possible that one of our roles is to become amazed by the grandeur of the universe itself. And you see how that might relate so that it's not simply that we are accumulating things. No, we're opening up the depths of our minds, of our souls, to appreciate the majesty of where we find ourselves. I would begin there, as to begin to think about the role of the human. I would say, let's not put that off. Let's start with that, especially in terms of how we educate our young.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you had said something like, by the time a child enters into first grade, they've experienced over 30,000 advertisements. And
Yeah.
I think about that, I think about how much we're bombarded with that keeps kind of pushing us down into that smaller life, that smaller vision, of this, consumerism, this kind of way of being, and not allowing us to really see and experience and feel and know what we are, starting right away. And I see how much, in a sense, I want to say we're up against, the obstacles in front of us, our educational system, our economy, our politics, like everything just sort of reflects that dominant paradigm, doesn't it?
Everything, every major institution has been shaped by that, right? And so then we also have coming forth all kinds of really interesting creative endeavors that are trying to find a way out of that. So it's happening simultaneously.
Absolutely.
But we are watching the end of a world. I mean, it is coming to an end.
Yeah, it feels like we're going into, like, what we would say, we're in the dark night, and it just keeps getting a little darker. As we're gaining the feeling into this deeper wisdom, and as more and more of us are understanding that, like you're saying, happening simultaneously. Yeah, with that, like, as we get into the darker night, we also are like, oh, something needs to happen. Like, it becomes more and more imperative, right?
And imperative, and I think too that a way, because it can be overwhelming when you start to take in the devastation that's taking place around the planet on every level. It can lead to paralysis, and that doesn't help. So that, but something to keep in mind is that the destruction itself that we begin to see can give us the energy to participate in the creative endeavor of renewal. So that's why they go together, I think.
Absolutely. They really do. And when we dive into the powers in a little bit, we're going to talk more about that, because I think it's such an important, it's such an important topic for us to dive into. And before we get into the powers of the universe a little deeper, I want to bring us into a conversation around consciousness.
Yeah.
The uniqueness of the human species, this self-reflexive consciousness. And in Journey of the Universe, you talk about symbolic consciousness.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about that, helping us to kind of understand this movement of awareness that's happening inside of us?
Yeah, I can try, because I think it's so important to think about this. But it's what I've noticed over the last few years is that the number of people that become focused on consciousness is exploding. It's really interesting. I mean, I teach in a graduate school, so I'm talking about academics and intellectuals, but this didn't exist at all 20 years ago. So it's amazing how much attention is being given to this question of consciousness. So so there's a wide range of orientations to this question, and I mean, up until recently, the modern scientific point of view was comfortable with the idea that consciousness was really a phenomenon that just pertained to humans. And that this is really the background we have to understand. Throughout the modern scientific period, humans were consciousness, and they were examining a world that was not conscious. So then there's a big range, and some people think, no, everything is consciousness. Everything on some level. Some people say, no, consciousness begins with life. No. Some people say it starts with the nervous system. I'm just trying to say that we're in the middle of this, so we don't have great clarity, but it's a thrilling investigation. So I don't want to I don't want to pretend like I have anything like the final answer.
Right.
I do have a perspective, and it is, at the very least, the other mammals, they're conscious. They have feelings, and I think their feelings are as intense as ours. They have these deep emotional bonds, so that I think of consciousness as just permeating at least the world of mammals. So even to just stay with that, but then you have human consciousness, and there's this difference. So in other words, I'm saying that, when a monkey jumps into a cold pool, it feels the cold the same way. Or when a wolf, right, sees a forest fire, it gets a kind of thrill the same way I would or any other human would. But there is this difference, and the difference is with the most colossal invention ever in human history. And it's the invention of the symbol. It's the invention of language that is symbolic language and that can live outside of a human being. No other animal has created a symbolic language. That doesn't mean they're less than we are. I mean, it just means that we've done something different. And what happened was that once you invent a symbol, you have found a way to store learning in a form that endures beyond the individual. That is the difference. Because now that means that, see, every time you have a new grizzly bear, well, they learn something and so forth. They die. All that learning dies out. Only what makes it into the genetic code is passed on, really. There's cultural learning as well between the mother grizzly and the babies, the youngsters. But there isn't a growing symbolic set of libraries and all the rest of it. So but with humans, we don't just have an individual mind. We have a mind that is 200,000 years old. That's the difference. That's what symbols enable. All of that learning grows and grows and grows. And so that's what enabled humans to outcompete every other species. We're no longer within the give and take and the natural discipline of a natural system. We have overwhelmed natural selection. I mean, it's a change. This is the first time in 3 billion years that a species has overwhelmed natural selection. And we've outcompeted everything. And so that's why there's no one that can slow us down. The difficulty is, so we have all of this power now with symbolic language, but what we don't have is a genetically based wisdom for dealing with it. So our challenge as a species is to create culturally the wisdom necessary for us to manage a power that is of the magnitude of an entire planet. That is, in one phrase, that is our challenge. You see, so we have over 7 billion humans, and so we have a population that's out of control. Well, you see, if the badgers had developed symbolic consciousness, they would have 7 billion badgers on the planet. We're trying to find a way to manage it. So the difficulty is that, and many thinkers have pointed this out, language is so powerful, it can imprison us. It can so bedazzle us that we end up living inside of it, by which I mean that the systems of language occupy our consciousness entirely. We live inside of theories. And so this is the way philosophers will talk about this, is that there's a first order reality, the universe, and then there's a second order reality, our language systems, which includes law, includes media, includes sports, all of that. And so so one way to talk about how to deal with symbolic consciousness is to see that what its power is to bring us more deeply into first order reality. Let me put it this way, is to say that all of our language enables us to actually understand that stars give birth to us. You see? So instead of just being completely mesmerized by the mathematics or the language, we can ride the symbols into this depth appreciation of the universe that gave birth to us. But if we don't do that, then we live entirely within an economic system, and it's all about accumulation of other symbols. Money is a symbolic. So then we get encapsulated by it, and we lose track. We think of the world as a bunch of resources. You see, so we lose that connection. So symbolic consciousness is a powerful new way for the human species to enter into a mode that is, I call it cosmological. We're no longer just one species among many. We're cosmological beings with a future that it's unknown to us, but it is, I think, magnificent.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a lot of ideas, but I just wanted to give you a sense of symbolic consciousness and how it can be distinguished from other forms of mammalian consciousness, and how, and to especially to get an appreciation for the power that the symbol has given us. And then one last way of saying it is this, that the power of symbolic language isn't just for humans. So we use it, you see, to build our corporations and to extend our control. But actually, the power of symbolic language is for the earth as a whole. It has surfaced within humans, so that we have a gift to give to the earth, and we're trying to discover what it is. In the oceans, the phytoplankton, their gift is oxygen. They've released that. And the question is, what is our gift? And I think it has something to do with a profound appreciation for the beauty of the universe expressed now in symbolic forms. Sorry to go on so long, Val.
Like I said before we began, we could talk about this for 10 hours. There's so much. It's just so rich. It's such an important conversation. And symbolic consciousness is, I feel like what we're doing right now is harnessing our understanding of symbolic consciousness and using it in a way to move us forward, evolutionarily speaking, right? So here we are engaged in it right now. The way of using it, not for like we're saying, like the money symbol and that idea, but here we are now perpetuating the larger story. And so how we can harness our understanding and our clarity in order to consciously move ourselves forward, right? So this is like
Beautiful.
The invitation of this moment. That's why the summit's here, so we can do that together.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful. If I can one comment on that, so that we, we're at an evolutionary dead end in terms of our industrial systems. They are destroying the earth. So anybody who thinks about it knows we're at an evolutionary dead end. Well, that has happened throughout 4 billion years of life. There are all kinds of evolutionary dead ends. And usually what that means is that the system goes into extinction. The species that are bringing that about go into extinction. But they don't have the power to change their DNA rapidly enough. We do, because of symbolic consciousness, because of having a summit that suddenly the humans can understand and can actually alter their consciousness, their lives. I thank you. That's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. And so then that brings us into this, what is this movement forward? So like, for instance, when the humans first started developing self-reflexive consciousness, how many years ago, Brian? About
Well, we now think that at least humans with our DNA and our body type, 200,000 years
Okay, so 200,000 years ago, we're
at
starting to
least.
become aware
If
of
we
ourselves,
gotta,
give or take, right?
yes,
Right.
yes,
So then it started happening in a few species, a few humans, and then more and more. And then over a long period, deep time, right? We're expanding our sense of time. Over time, it became the dominant characteristic of the human species. Here we are. And now we're in this next movement, like this quantum leap forward, where here, we're engaged in this conversation. There are those of us in the human species that are becoming really aware of ourselves on this next level, and that's starting to spread, and we're getting so excited to share it and so passionate about, once we get it, like everybody needs to get this, so we're finding every way possible to share the information. And now, instead of being in just a couple humans, it's starting to be spread into
yeah,
more and more humans. And it's like, what's going to happen first, right? The complete devastation, annihilation of human species, or this quantum leap in consciousness towards a new speciation, a new human in a sense, without
yes,
sounding too crazy or woo-woo, but like really
yeah,
like the next step of what it means to be human.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. I think it's important too. Like you bring up woo woo. Yeah, I think it's important too to emphasize that what we're talking about is very grounded in
So good.
on our understanding of the universe, so that the human species can be described as the first species that can go through speciation without changing its anatomy. So that it is the case that the human species has gone through a number of speciation events, and some thinkers talk about the time when we were mythological. If you go back several thousand years, and then there was a time when we were the classical civilizations. So Jean Gebser, one philosopher, calls this the time of mentality. So it's healthy mentality, and then more recently, we've entered the scientific mode, scientific technological, so that we're in the middle of another transformation, and it's not anything that hasn't been happening. So yes, what kind of speciation event are we involved in right now? That's the same question that many of us, certainly you, are asking.
Right. So with all of this, I feel like I feel like we have this sense. We've been unfolding for 13.7 billion years. There's this great intelligence, this great mystery that we're complexifying into, in a sense.
Yeah,
We're getting to know ourselves. We're understanding the self-reflexive consciousness and symbolic consciousness, and how to harness our understanding of that to move us forward by gaining a deeper context for ourselves as universe, and the contemplation of the great mystery. And so for me, the next logical step in our conversation right now is to now talk about what we've learned. So you've really distilled, in a sense, the powers of the universe into 10 really potent, forms, if you will. And I feel like we could go through those to give people a real sense of what we've understood in that are in the universe. Now, when we say in the universe, we don't just mean something out there, right? Because we are the universe,
yeah,
becoming aware of
yeah,
it. So when we
yeah,
say these are the powers that we've discovered in the universe, what we're really also saying simultaneously is that these are the powers that we are discovering that are within us.
yes,
And we have this ability as universe
yeah,
to move ourselves forward consciously and powerfully and with so much clarity when we get to understand what's possible and what's emerging inside of us.
yeah,
Ah.
yeah.
So,
That's well said. Yes, there it is. Yeah.
as Carl Sagan used to say, if we want to bake an apple pie from scratch, we must first create the universe.
Such a great succinct statement of the whole thing. It's right there. If you want an apple pie, you need.
Right? We need it all. So how are we going to move forward? Let's start to understand what's inside of us as universe, Brian.
Yeah.
I know we don't have endless time to dive into all
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, no,
It's
but
cool to get a sense of, like, seamlessness as a
Yeah,
starting point, and then into those 10 powers a little bit. And then we can dive in a little bit more as we were discussing before, and we'll go from there.
sure. Yeah, yeah, it's good. Maybe a way of introducing the whole thing of powers of the universe. So uh, we can summarize the whole vast story by saying that, let's say 14 billion years ago, things were very simple. 14 billion years ago, there were just protons, electrons, neutrons, dark matter. There's just things were very, very simple 14 billion years ago. And then over the course of time, we developed stars and planets and galaxies, and then we have hummingbirds. And so like that, all of that happened. And that is, we say it's evolution. But what were the powers that made that? What were the processes? How did it happen? Well, science really has been studying that just from the very beginning, trying to understand, even before we knew there was an evolutionary process. It was to try to understand how things change in the universe. It's amazing, right? And what we've learned is incredible. And as you're saying, Val, that these are not processes that are taking some place somewhere else. They're here. They're operating right now. I mean, the sun is shining because of these processes. The earth is going around the sun because of these processes. So what I was trying to do was to identify the principal processes, and identified 10, in a way 11. I mean, I'll go into that, but I guess I want to begin by saying, if you wanted to go into more detail, you could come up with 25 processes. If you want to do it more simply, you could have 3. So there's nothing magical for me about the numbers. It's simply, but just to give you a feeling for it. So here we are, and we're composed of all these different atoms of carbon, of oxygen, of phosphorus, of sulfur. Let me just say one little thing about that. I mean, we're composed of all these different kinds of atoms. We also know that we're something like 70% water. That's a certain molecule, H2O. Now, and we have DNA molecules. Those are long, complicated molecules. All right. So, but if you actually just thought about the number of atoms that we're composed of, all right, the number of atoms, right? We are 99% water molecules, 99%, right? So by weight, we're 70% water, but number, we're like water molecules. We're a glob of water walking around. I mean, it just blows my mind. So oxygen, hydrogen, these different atoms are who we are. And also we're more just these atoms. They do something mysterious. So, but I just want to talk about one of these atoms that we're composed of, and that would be the hydrogen atom. The hydrogen atom is composed of a proton in the middle, surrounded by a cloud of electron cloud, so electron going around. What's in between the electron and the proton? So this was utterly, no one knew in the 19th century. It wasn't until the 20th century that we realized, wow, the electron and the proton, they're apart. What's in between them? Nothing's in between them. There aren't other atoms in there. There aren't other particles in there. There's nothing there. And so we calculate the amount. The amount of nothingness in a hydrogen atom is over 99%. So it's largely empty. The same is true of the oxygen atom. So if you put hydrogen and oxygen together, it's 99% empty. So that we are 99% empty. That's like, that can be, I don't know, it's startling news for sure. But then the scientists discovered something about the emptiness. And I know I'm kind of stuttering. The reason I'm kind of stuttering is because even though I've thought about this most of my life, it still just amazes me. It just blows my mind. This goes back to the theoretical work of the British physicist Paul Dirac. And he was the first one to begin to suspect that what we call empty is actually a realm of generativity. So that elementary particles crop into existence. They just come into existence out of what we call the quantum vacuum. So I said we're 99% empty, but it's also the case that emptiness is the ground of all being. It's the ground that gives birth to the elementary particles. They come out of that. I mean, you mentioned seamlessness. So you can use the word seamlessness to talk about this, or you can use the word vacuum. But again, these are symbols. I just want to bring forward the idea that by giving it a name, it doesn't mean that we understand it. We understand little facts about it. But so seamlessness, in a certain sense, which I call the power zero. In other words, because I wanted to emphasize the nothingness, right? Zero, and it's kind of like the mother of all the powers, because it's out of seamlessness is the ground out of which everything comes forth. So
it's fair to say that this space, this 99.999%, what we used to think was empty, that's really completely full of everything, like possibilities and potential, and everything emerges from that. Everything that's come into the universe.
Everything.
So we think about our bodies, and we think about, okay, the matter 0.01% and this space in between everything, 99.999% of what we are is this space of pure generativity from which everything, every possibility, every power, everything of the universe can arise. That's what we are. We are most of that.
That is our current best understanding of the nature of the universe. And that's why I root it back to Paul Dirac. That's the best we have to offer. That's how we understand it is like, what to call it, pure generativity. Everything comes fluttering out of this realm. Now in quantum physics, that we will talk about elementary particles coming forth. But just like you say, I think in time we will understand more and more that emotions come forth and ideas and new insights, and so that we dwell in the ground of all creative energy that we know about. That's the nature of the human, to be aware that we are this creative energy in the form of a mammal. I just, whoa. I mean, I just take that in and now plan your day. It's like, okay, right? So it's not a question of wow, maybe I'm creative. No. Everything in the universe is creative because everything is rooted in ultimate creativity. It's just a question of what kind of creativity do I want to develop? So that we can move and to so then we have these, we have particles emerge, and we have the development of different articulated beings. And so the simplest ones would be the atoms. So we have the atoms that come forth, and if you look at the universe, you see it's composed of these particular beings. We call them objects or things, but they have a center. They're like, it's the Milky Way galaxy, or it's our sun, it's the Earth. We can point to it and say, there it is. And so that process, some scientists call centration. It's just a word. It's the making of a one. It's a making of a thing or a being, and here we are. So then you have this power of giving birth to something new that didn't exist before, right? So that these things that emerge, these beings that emerge, they have relationships. They enter into a web of relationships, and at a very primal level, the feelings of the relationship are of two kinds. There's an attraction, or there's a repulsion. So that comes forth with. I mean, it could have been different. It could have been the universe would constellate into all these different centers, and they ignore each other, right? But no, in the universe, they have a relation. I just call that the power of allurement.
Yes.
You know, and just to choose a word. Now, notice I'm emphasizing the attraction part. See, the repulsion it'd be like negative allurement. So, so everything that happens in the universe happens with respect to the power of allurement. As humans, we're drawn together, we get excited, things happen from that, or we're turned off, we move away, or the same thing with the atoms. Atoms are drawn together and they form molecules, all right? Birds are drawn together, and they form their life as bonded pairs. But so the major form of allurement for a scientist is the power of gravity, right? And general relativity in the words and the work of Albert Einstein. But this power of allurement gave birth to the stars and the galaxies and the planets. So it pervades the universe, and it's at work at all times. So that, and you can think about then just the vastness of the universe, but it's suffused with this power of allurement.
There's a great way that you describe it when you're talking about gravity, and we think about how, imagine laying on the earth, and we immediately tend to think of looking up into the cosmos. And instead, this invitation is for us to imagine that we're laying on the earth, on the bottom of the earth, looking down into the cosmos. Because we very well might be what's up and down and left and right in the cosmos, but imagining that, and that we're looking down into the cosmos. And when we do that, we feel the power, the intense power of this invisible force of gravity holding us, always like pressing us into the earth. And
Val, have you tried it?
Yes! I have tried it many times, Brian.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes, it's a powerful experience, a shift in perception that gives you an embodied sense of allurement. And I've recommended it to many people. Your work has infused my work in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's a really powerful way to get a felt sense of allurement. And when we feel that sense of gravity, then we can really tap into that when we think about how we feel attracted to other things, because it becomes a sort of invisible felt sense. We get to use our imagination to really feel it, even though it literally is happening to us. But when we capture that we get to translate that into all kinds of ways that we experience allurement.
Oh, that is, I just love hearing this. It gives me a chance to say it, something more about it. And the first would be this. I sometimes think that you sort of wonder if you'll be remembered when you die, and if so, how, right? And so I certainly, as I get older, I've thought about that, and I think that process of, just as you just described it, of feeling in your own body the power of gravity. I sometimes think that will be what I'll be remembered for most. And at the same time, I have to say, I didn't invent it. I was given a lecture somewhere, and a woman came up to me afterwards and said, I have an idea for you to try. And she laid it out, and I feel so bad I didn't write down her name. I was sort of like disturbed and trying to get through my day, but it's another example of what we're talking about, the 200,000-year-old mind. So that we pick up these ideas from others and we bring them together. I mean, synergy. It's possible. Synergy, yes, and the idea that we can come up with something, and then we can share it, and so suddenly it's all over the planet. All right. I mean, if there are people in the Philippines tomorrow that try this because of what you've put together, you see that the power of symbolic consciousness at work, and I just think it's thrilling to be part of this. It's possible that I don't have a single new idea, but I've paid attention and trying to draw together these things. But it is, for those of you that haven't tried it, just to go out at night and just to lie down and just to sit there and contemplate the stars. I mean, what could be more beautiful of a way to spend some time, is to contemplate the stars, and then just to do this moment of in your imagination, realizing that you might as well imagine you're at the bottom of the planet, because there is no up and down in space. And you just sit there and you're in the bottom of the planet, and you're beholding the stars below you. And the key thing is to think, if you could snap your fingers and turn off the allurement of the planet Earth, you would roar away into the stars. Yeah. I mean, that's a scientific statement. If you could somehow turn off the gravity of the Earth, the allurement of the stars would pull you away. You would fall down to them. And well, just like Val said, when that experience comes to you, you realize, wow, you are the universe reflecting upon itself in human consciousness, and it is.
I can't say that enough. Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Right. And you go from, and that is one of the central moves of our time, is go from knowing about the universe to becoming the universe. Because in that moment, the allurement it's coursing through your consciousness, and you can feel it. Yeah. So that's allurement. I'll give you an example, because I feel like we need to also emphasize negative allurement, how important it is. Okay, so that just to get a feel for that, negative allurement is repulsion, and the most central or primary way to think about that from the point of view of physics is the electromagnetic interaction. So, for instance, like charges repel one another. Right. The charge of a proton is positive, the charge of a proton is a positive, and so protons will push themselves apart. And there it is, negative allurement. Now, but here's the amazing thing. The protons of our atoms are all very, very close together. So we have a very interesting situation, which we didn't know about until the 20th century. And that is that there is even though there's this negative allurement where the protons want to move apart, there's an allurement even more powerful than the electrical. And that's the strong nuclear interaction. So the strong nuclear allurement is holding all the protons together in every atom of our body. Now get this. If we could just turn off the strong nuclear interaction just for 1 second, our bodies would volatilize instantaneously. I mean, the protons would scatter apart, and we would be reduced to elementary particles instantaneously. The reason, I mean, what's the use of this thought experiment? It's to emphasize the point you're making, Val, is that when we talk about the universe and its powers, we're talking about what's going on inside of us as well as out in space. So.
And it really brings me to thinking about like all these different pieces that are being held together, as you're saying, right? Through allurement.
Yeah.
How do I want to say this? Like, what is that mystery that brings us to life? You know, that if that disappeared, all of a sudden we would into every direction. But when we put it all together, we're not just a bunch of different pieces being held together. Like there's an animated force. There's an energy that it's like we're billions of cells. We're not just one organism, right? We're billions of cells in this magic, synergistic relationship. And somehow when you bring it all together, there's this life force. And when we die, there's this, right? The greatest question in the world, what happens? Where does that energy? The body just becomes this bunch of pieces then that break down and become food for other animals and lives on. And yet there's this energy, this life force, this great mystery that just does what, right? It's like the greatest question, but I feel like as we discuss this, we're getting closer somehow. It may bring us more questions, but that's the fun of it,
It is, absolutely. But just to stay with that for a minute, so what is the force, what is the power, what is the process that brings forth a self, let's call it, all right?
Yeah.
Out of the disparate parts. We could say a whole, right? Out of the parts, but we could also say a self. And that would be a cutting edge in science. In the late 20th century and into the 21st century, one of the most exciting areas in sciences can be called science. Also,
can be called what? Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Complexity science.
Complexity science.
It goes by different names, but complexity science, nonlinear dynamics, self-organizing dynamics. But one way to talk about it is, as you're saying, it's when you have the parts come together, then they give rise to a whole. And the whole is something that is dependent upon, but that is more than the parts themselves. Just to pick on, to choose an example, and by the way, we have now moved from the into the third power, emergence. Okay, so that when you have the different parts that are brought, they're drawn together, and when they come together, they can at times ignite a new self, a new whole, a new being. And the most cosmological example is the birth of a star. So you have you can even tell the story of the powers up to this point. So you have out of the creative void, you have the elementary particles emerging. All right, and then they find themselves as these constellated energy events. Wow, proton, neutron, right? And then they experience the power of allurement, and they're drawn together into an association. Like, so you have an electron and a proton. They're associated, they're drawn together, and then they give birth to a new self, a new being, a hydrogen atom. And that's this power of emergence. The hydrogen atom isn't just an electron or proton nearby each other. No, it's a new entity. Mm-hmm. It has new relationships in the universe and new powers in the universe. Mm-hmm. So to take that to the example of the star, you have atoms of hydrogen, and they're drawn together by allurement. And then they give birth to something new, a star that radiates this energy, so that this power, the star is something new that was. I'm using a little bit of metaphorical language here, picking up on you, Val. It's like the star was lurking in the creative void, and then the hydrogen atoms, through their interaction, have the power to evoke that form into existence. And there it is. The star comes into being. And in a similar way, we have the emergence of the galaxies and of the life forms, so that it is something new. See, when a star, just let me last little thing on the star. When the star comes into existence, it starts to organize itself. Up until that moment, the hydrogen atoms were the ones in charge. But when the star itself emerges, it organizes the hydrogen. That's the emergence of this new being, the self. And so we see the same thing with life, and something mysterious comes forth, a whole, a self.
And we were discussing earlier too, this, with emergence and creativity, that it really thrives on, in a sense, like the chaos, the dark night of the soul. Like when we're pushed into this darker and darker place, we're really forced into our deeper sense of creativity to emerge something new that will move us forward and up and out of that darkness, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, right? So this
Yes.
is tapping into this power of creativity and emergence, and how it sort of becomes like the answer to the tension.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Yeah, and to put it in terms of, not that we need to, but just because we're going through the powers, to put it in terms of the powers, you've moved into talking about the power of cataclysm. I mean, that would be there. You could use different words, but I mean, you could say the power of death,
Right.
the power of annihilation.
Right.
I mean, it is, in a certain sense, you look around the universe, and destruction and creativity are both happening. So it is, in the context of the universe, death is something that the universe invented. I think that is a way I'd like to say it. I mean, it is, death. A death can be, a death for a living being can be an accident. I mean, a boulder could roll down a mountain and kill a squirrel. That's an accidental death. But even if everything goes well, the squirrel lives a full life, the squirrel will die, because death is part of the epigenetic program of the DNA. Now, so that it gives you pause. Like, so death isn't it's a mistake or a failing. In our industrial society, we have the sense of death being a failure, and that we have to somehow find a way around death. So we have these crazy experiments of people freezing themselves for hoping that when they come back, they'll. No, death and destruction.
An obsession to avoid cataclysm at all costs. Like, we don't want to face. It feels scary to think about death. It feels scary to think about breaking down, our bodies breaking down, the world around us. I think in so many ways, we turn away from these things.
Yes.
We think, the great, Joanna Macy and many others are talking about this movement right now as the great turning.
Yes.
And I feel like, we're turning towards cataclysm.
Yes. Yes.
Turning towards possibility and emergence as well. Turning towards everything versus this sort of turning away or escapism that we tend to be consumed in our society. And we use all these ways of numbing out and running away and not feeling or facing cataclysm.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And so the opportunity the opportunity of seeing things in terms of the universe as a whole is to recognize that the cataclysm is the way the universe operates. I mean, one way to begin to talk about that, again, from the point of view of life, would be to say that of all the species that have existed over 4 billion years, over 99% of them have gone extinct. So the way life is moving involves extinction. I find this really worth reflecting on,
especially
because
the state of our world right now, where we're in the state of mass extinction. We're in
yes,
we're literally, like, I mean, my lifetime, 40 something years, like, here I've never experienced as much of that. And what used to be like kind of quietly scientists talking about it is now mainstream news. This
yes,
destruction. Yes.
yes, exactly. Yes, yeah. Uh, that that discovery that we're actually in the middle of not just of a few extinctions, but a mass extinction. Mass extinction. That was one of the big moments of my life, and it can be a huge moment for anyone. I mean, we didn't know there were any extinctions on the planet Earth until the early 19th century. Now, that you see, it's so recent, right? So I mean, that alone it amazes me that I mean, Confucius, the Buddha, Plato, all these great thinkers did not know that a species would go extinct. It wasn't until the very, very late 18th century, early 19th century, that humans began to realize that species actually go out of the life system. One of the reasons Thomas Jefferson was in favor of the Louisiana Purchase. So those of you that are not American, I mean, United States was just part of the continent, and then there was an opportunity to buy a huge chunk of the North American continent. And Thomas Jefferson was thrilled about this. And one of the reasons he was thrilled is because he thought maybe we would find some dinosaurs. God, it just blows my mind. I
Yeah.
mean, they found these great big bones, elsewhere. And well, where'd they all go? So my point is that that in that time we lived within a worldview that thought that species were always here. Now we see that in the evolutionary process, all of these species come forth, and very, very many of them end up going extinct. So then the question is why? And the at least the reflection of some biologists is that it enables new forms to come forth. So that we have, you had the dinosaurs were fantastic, but they crowded, they filled up all of the niches of the planet, so that there wasn't any possibility for the mammals to come forth. So it's not like life designed this mass extinction, but when it happened, it enabled the mammals to take off and flourish.
Right.
And so that is the way in which our life operates. We find ourselves now in a mass extinction. It's part of what I meant earlier on when I said we're at the end of an era.
Yes. And in that, Brian, too, sorry to jump in, but like thinking about the human species now completely dominating this planet, pushing other species out of their environments, right? So because we're at 7 billion plus, people have this idea, we can fit how many ever more humans, but we forget about diversity and the importance of how everything works together and has been built on that for millions of years. So here we are now, the humans sort of taking over the planet like the dinosaurs did, creating this mass extinction that's now our fault, right? It's
Yeah.
not our story, it's the human's choices with this limited sense of self, right? Wonder what's going to happen. Like, I just wonder what's going to happen here. Like, is life, as life is learning and trying new things and the great experiment that we're all part of, is it time for the humans to move out of the way so a new species can arise? I mean, it's just so interesting, the questions that arise from the patterns that we've seen through understanding this,
It is. Just to give you one of the ideas of Thomas Berry. So he's asking the question too. So we have all this, things are coming to an end, and what is emerging? And he had a very interesting idea of what is emerging. He would call it a new form of human, a new form. So it'd be like a new species. And he would use the phrase like a cosmological human, and it would be characterized by a realization that the principal activity for a human is celebration. So that it was that we would join the earth community and join the celebration that's already taking place. I found that so attractive. And he said, and then I would ask him things, because he studied the world's spiritual traditions, and you will go into this in greater detail with Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm. But just to throw out one idea, which I thought was so fantastic, I would ask him about the world's spiritual traditions and which of them. He said all of them will be important, but the principal source for spiritual energy in the emergent era will be the animals. We will come to see their profound beauty, and they will be the source. They will be our spiritual guides. I love that.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so this idea, of what's emerging in this time, and then just to move into maybe just thinking about homeostasis. I'm thinking about the next power. Let's say next. They're not really in any order, but the next power, and how like the earth, like when we think of homeostasis, I'm jumping into your next power, Brian. Here we go. When I think about homeostasis, and I think in general, we think about, creating that sense of balance that allows life to thrive. So like in our own bodies, 98.6 is this temperature that we tend to hover at that creates the optimum condition for life. And if it gets too high, parts of the system kick in to bring us back into that healthy zone. And so when we look at Earth as a living system, we can also see that at play with the different parts of the earth kicking in, with the salinity in the ocean, how things become balanced by the organisms that absorb the salt. And, we see it at play all over the place. And I'm introducing homeostasis for you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because I'm thinking about, that things are shifting so radically right now. And so like the prokaryotes, and once upon a time, our atmosphere was not dominated by oxygen, and that was like the waste product of the prokaryotes. And in order for organisms to survive, because the atmosphere became so saturated with oxygen that these prokaryotes couldn't survive, so they had to mutate and create a symbiotic relationship to create the eukaryote, which could take oxygen in. So the composition of the atmosphere shifted, and species then shifted completely. There became a new normal in the atmosphere. And I feel like we're in such a radically shifting time right now, where who knows what's going to happen. And I'm so curious to your opinion on it, where you think we're heading, as far as, is there going to be a new normal? The earth is trying to find a balance in all this chaos. What are your thoughts on that? Like what's happening right now regarding the power of homeostasis? What do you see?
That's, I love the way you summarize. It's just, that's exactly it. And then I would say too that just the same way you said with the change, when you have the eukaryotic cells come forth, everything adjusted, so that everything began to enter into this change. And that is how, in general terms, how I see things, so that it is that we're awakening to two things simultaneously: the destruction of this gorgeous earth. It's taking place. The more we look at it, the worse it gets. In other words, we're awakening to that, and we're discovering the amazing creative process that gave rise to all of this. They're happening at the same time. That really does lead to a new kind of understanding. And so instead of it being the case where all the species are going to adjust, one way to talk about the change is that the institutional systems, all of them, are in the process of adjusting to this new normal, the new normal of realizing that human decisions are determining the quality of life for billions and billions of beings, not just humans, but all around the planet. And so that everything is shifting. It's all happening. No matter what field a person is in, that the shift is beginning to take place. And you'll be going into this later in the summit for sure, but just to sort of sketch it out a little bit, so that educational systems are beginning to shift. And right now they're going from, it's a place for learning the skills for getting a job in industrial society, right, to it's a process for discovering our participation in a complex Earth system.
Yes.
Huge shift, but on every level, on all throughout, just a vast shift. And then just to choose just one more, in the realm of law, right, and of and regulation, the shift is from a law as a protection of capital and human right, protection of human rights, to law that maintains the integrity of the whole Earth system. So this
wasn't in New Zealand that they just, I think it was New Zealand, it's vague now, but that they gave like I don't know if I want to say like a rainforest, the status of personhood. I may have that a little bit wrong, but it was some ecosystem that they were trying to protect. They gave it the status of personhood, like we have done with corporations.
Yes, exactly.
They've done that, and you're right. We're seeing these huge strides in recognizing Earth as a living thing to protect its intrinsic value, rather than seeing it as instrumental, so that the only value it has is the amount of money dollar sign we put on that value it is for us to use. Now it's the value that it has in and of itself. And that is a huge shift. That is happening.
That would be, that's a nice way of summarizing exactly the essence of the shift, what you just said. And that just every institutional system will change around that shift. I mean, and it's going to take time, but for those of us who are kind of awakening to it, the creative possibilities are so immense. There's so much that can be done.
Yeah, even in mainstream, even in like the university that I went to, we had a deep ecology program. I wouldn't say program, class, right? But that's a start.
Yeah,
I actually used to teach as an adjunct professor at Florida International University, and I would teach in the deep ecology program there. And that was
fantastic.
to be able to bring this stuff in, and really dive into this. So, even in some mainstream universities, we're seeing it. Obviously, there's a ton of niche, universities and colleges out there that are doing this now. But we're starting to see it more and more, and I keep coming back to this idea, we have to think about it in terms of deep time, because even homeostasis is not like everything right now balanced. It's a long-term, bigger vision type of thing, so it seems like things are totally out and crazy and upset and upside down. And it's like, how will it look in, when we look at it in the deeper span of time, what kind of new normal will we see arise? So we start seeing it in little pieces first, right?
Yes, exactly. These little these little niche universities, as you call them. That's where the creativity resides.
Yes.
Yeah, I know it. I was thinking, that's right. I teach in one of those places.
Yeah, and it's great.
But,
and your program is Cosmology and Consciousness, right?
yeah, you forgot one word, philosophy.
Philosophy,
cosmology, and consciousness. Philosophy is not my favorite, because you think of the past, but it is, to me, the good word, it involves wisdom.
Yes.
So it's trying to look at
yes.
philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness all together. But it's so important to have these niche places where people who have the same orientation can support one another.
Absolutely, that's it. Right, we're about to move into that, Brian. In the next, well, actually, we have synergy, which we talked a little bit about.
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah. Synergy. Now, synergy would be, in certain ways, I think synergy is the most exciting power of all. Because it's so remarkable. Just in a phrase, synergy is an effect that comes into existence through a relationship. So it is something real that comes forth that doesn't exist in the component parts. It only exists when the component parts are brought into relationship. It means that relationship is fundamental. It's not something later or added on. It's, in philosophical terms, it's ontological, or it's primal, right? And here's my favorite example of synergy. It's so simple, and it still blows my mind. You have, we've been talking about elementary particles. And so you have a proton and you have a neutron, all right? Now, the neutron is unstable. So after a few minutes, a neutron will decay into other elementary particles. And this happens all the time. But if you take a neutron and you bring it into relationship with the proton, that neutron can exist for billions of years. The relationship enables a being to persist for billions of years. If you take away the relationship, it dissolves. Now, that is, it's like the essence of life. Bring together all of these atoms and you form an oak tree. Well, the oak tree is something new. It's like this new power in the universe. If you just move those molecules just a tenth of an inch in different directions, it goes away. So that, in a phrase, is what synergy is about. It's about the power that comes from relationship. So going back to the idea that we led into this, when humans get together with people with whom they can synergize, so there has to be enough of a resonance so you can enter into a deep relationship. What takes place in their midst takes place there in the midst and not when they're apart.
Right.
And all of us have had this experience, and just to call it a power is to just bring those moments into the fore. I've already talked about the birth of a star. If you have an atom, it's not a star. If you have 1,000 atoms, it's not a star. You need 10 to the 57th atoms brought together, and a star comes forth. It's like, so it's an effect that comes out of the relationships. A star, just brilliantly burning and everything, it doesn't exist in the parts, only in their synergistic relationships.
Yeah. I think in a way that I think I've thought about it before, which is kind of just a really simple thing, is just the idea of brainstorming with other people. Where, like, if you sit there and think about ideas yourself, and you might come up with some really great ideas. And then whenever I, come together with a group of a few people or even one other person, and you start having an idea and that makes them think of another idea. And then all of a sudden something totally radically new is born, a new idea, a new project, a new something, because of the two of you and all the knowledge and all the wisdom of your experience coming together to create this new thing. So like I always tell people, if you want to think of something new, go talk about it with some people and let them brainstorm with you and see what wants to emerge from the combination and the synergy of our wisdom. So I love, like, it's another way that I love to look at synergy and at play, like in our day-to-day lives.
I just love that. Exactly. No, it's so, it's why, another, I just want to just stay with that idea because I love it so much. So yeah, the allurement between like two people, and they're drawn together, and through their relationship, a new human being can be born. All right. Well, in other words, there's an example of synergy at work. It's the one of the components alone isn't enough. But if you bring them together, you have this amazing synergy. So we have sexual reproduction, but it's very much the same power when you have a group of people that have that kind of resonance that you're talking about.
Right.
And they're drawn together. And I think the excitement that we feel when we discover what we call you can call them conversational partners or soulmates or just professional colleagues, whatever it is. When we find people with that kind of deep resonance, it's analogous to sexual excitement. It really is. It's like this. And using a word from the world of philosophy is eros, and this was the word that Plato would use when he's talking about this power. We've reduced the word down to just sex, but eros was this power that would draw people together to give birth to something that's new. So it's like we're giving birth to new forms of ideas, and it's so thrilling.
Yeah, there's so many ways to see it at play, to express it.
On an everyday life, But actually, the opposite is also there. Is that this has to be said that when sometimes there's a negative synergy. There's a negative synergy as well, and that is when we're talking to certain people and we're revealing our most exciting ideas, and their response can just kill it. You feel embarrassed and ashamed of yourself for being so stupid, and so there's discernment is necessary.
Yeah, that's really important. I'm so glad you said that. It's really important to think about. And so, then on a very practical level, it invites us to consider the company that we keep, and especially in the space of creativity, and we want to play with that, and to who are the people that we're really feeling that connection with, that we I don't want to say that we can vibe with and play with in that way. The people that constantly shoot us down are not the people that we want to come around and share that new brilliant idea with, right?
No, it's not a good idea. Or if you're going to, you have to have an understanding that you have to protect yourself, because it's almost like, just to use like sex as this analogy, it's the same kind of discernment in choosing a mate, a sexual mate. It's such a big decision, and I think it's similar. The discernment is necessary in terms of who we want to really engage with at a deep level, because it's so important.
Absolutely. So taking all of this energy and now thinking about how do we let it move through us, I feel like can move us into transmutation.
Yes, exactly. And so the power of transmutation is transmutation is a word that it's another word for change. And the reason I liked that word, and so many others could be used, is because of mutation, mutate. And so I wanted to bring to mind biological evolution, and just the way in which we have species constantly transmuting, changing. But in particular, I wanted to focus on to bring up the idea of one particular being changing, so that in the biological world, this process is called development or epigenesis. So you start off with a fertilized egg, and then it goes through these different changes, and we recognize you have a young horse, then you have an adult horse, an old horse. It's this whole long process, and that's the way in which life operates. But then the question, so that's taking place within us as well. But then the question for the human becomes even more critical, because there are so many different possibilities for development. We make decisions about what we're going to become in a way that many insects don't. They have fewer options available to them. So then this question of how do we proceed, and just to give a certain sense of it, like with the butterfly, you have a movement that involves a change that's so deep, it's like a destruction of one self for the emergence of another self. So that you have this little worm crawling around, and suddenly you have this thing flying. I mean, wow, what happened? But that is possible. Humans can enter into processes that deeply. And then the question becomes, it's simple to say, but it's profound to pull out. What is the deepest dream that surfaces within us? What is the deepest dream? How do we, and even to identify that is a real achievement. So we're drawn by different visions and different archetypes, draws, and to discern, to choose among them. What is it? And then as we begin to get a sense of what image of ourselves draws us forward, the next question is, what are the forces that are actually blocking it? What's actually holding us back from that?
And how can those things that are holding us back and challenging us actually sort of create the push that moves us into our greatness?
Exactly. So to use through the power of consciousness, to realize that what is holding us back can become part of the energy that pushes us out into another way of being ourselves. So it is to identify that. If we don't identify what is holding us back, we will simply be imprisoned by it. But to identify it, we can turn it into a power by realizing that we're going to do everything we can to actually move beyond that. I have a phrase that I use to talk about this. What is necessary is to develop a membrane. So a psychic membrane. So if a living cell, all around the edges of the cell is a layer of discernment. So as the cell moves through its environment and it has encounters, it's making a decision as to what it allows in and what it blocks out.
Right.
So that it allows in what will add to its vitality, and it blocks out what will reduce it. And I think those of us that find ourselves alive here in the midst of all of this, we have to have a sense of where it is we want to go, how we want to move forward, and we have to have a growing sense of what energies, what people, what programs actually enhance that movement, and which ones block it or retard it. And as we develop the psychic membrane, we begin to free ourselves from a lot of the toxins that are flowing about our world, and also we allow ourselves to participate in those creative energies that are moving us forward. So just in a sketch, I would say that all of us are in that process of transmutation to allow our deeper commitments to flourish.
There's a great story that you talk about in a way, as a way of describing transmutation that I love, and it's the story of the hawk and the mouse. And I wonder if you could just quickly give us a taste of that, because I think it is the most brilliant way of giving us an understanding of how the things that seem to oppose us, that like, oh, I don't want that, are actually like making us amazing. Because I really think it gives us a deep sense of how to look at transmutation and everything that happens in our lives as a gift, in a sense, with the discernment of that membrane.
Yeah, I will try. The best thing for us to do would be to go out and watch some hawks and some mice. That would be, wow. That's my vision. But just to give a sense of it, so you have this what we call a antagonistic relationship of predator prey, the hawk and the mouse, and so the hawk. If you ask the hawk about its life, and it could talk, who knows what it would say? All right. But let me put myself in the hawk, because I don't want to denigrate any hawks. But if I were a hawk, I would be irritated by the success of the mouse, because when the vole, the shrew, when they get away, I have to work harder. I'm hungry, so I would if I were given power, I would ask for slower mice, because then I could get down there and eat more quickly. And why? Well, then I could kick back and watch NFL football. I mean, there'd be something about being a human and American. There'd be something about, I want more leisure time, right? And maybe the hawk doesn't, but it would be this mouse. I have to think about it all the time. I'm always trying to get. So, but what would happen is that the process of natural selection, because the mice is slower, it means that as the generations go along, hawks that are slower become biologically viable. So now the population actually shifts to hawks that have lost some of their speed. Well, you can see where this is going. Now you have these slower hawks who are now complaining because they have to work harder to get food. So if they have power, they slow the mouse down to so much so that now the hawks can do really, really well just by walking around, and they lose their ability to fly. So it's a bizarre situation, really, when you think about it, that by granting the hawk his wish will lead to his ruin. So that this is a way in which to begin to see that that in the obstacles of our lives, there is the possibility for developing excellence of form. So I mean, the hawk, the brilliance of the hawk, its eyesight, its speed, its the amazing intelligence, it's all dependent upon the excellence of the mice. So they actually go together. Now, it is it's kind of a colossal image for our time, especially. We are so divisive right now. I'm talking now when I say we, I'm talking about United States of America, but it's true in other places of the world. But I just want to talk about ourselves. We are so split. We are so split, and the way in which I orient myself in this time of antagonism between humans is to say that my struggle with moving forward in the midst of these antagonisms is the best way for me to arrive at the best I have to offer. If we took away the struggle itself, my work would collapse. It would become, such as it is, it would become much worse. It's right. Transmutation enables us to embrace the difficult aspects of life as oftentimes contributing to the emergence of excellence of form.
Yes, beautifully said. And then from that, from that space where we're experiencing this sort of individual change and how we're all being invited to show up more powerfully, more present, with more clarity, asking the deeper questions. Like, this is, as you're saying, like, the challenge of our time is inviting us to, like, evolve or die, in a sense, right now, this is imperative. We have to move forward. We have to get this. And so as individuals, we're owning it. And now when we do that, when we step into our own sense of transmutation, we get to take the next step, which is coming together in transformation.
Precisely. Yes. And moving into the deeper powers of synergy. So this summit that you're putting together, you see, this is a way in which for people that have a resonance to enter into relationship and possibly connect up and to be part of these of the groups of people who are well into the process of transmutation, and then gathering together in the power of working together to alter things now at the social, the planetary level.
Right.
And that's why I teach at the California Institute. It is because I want to be with those people and be part of the resonance and to participate in it. And this is happening all over it. And that's why I'm thrilled that you are carrying this out, Val, with the summit. And it will also excite others to follow your lead and to be part of this. It is this would be part of evolution that we call cultural evolution. And here's just a phrase: cultural evolution is 100,000 times faster than genetic evolution. So this is the power of transformation.
Oh, absolutely.
It is that we are making happen, that you are making happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, this is us, right? I'm one person as a catalyst bringing us together, but I couldn't do it without you and the 27 other speakers that are part of this incredible journey, and the hundreds of others I wish could have joined us this time around, because these conversations are the ones that deepen us, that invite us to really contemplate what's happening and who we are, and get out of the automatic habitual routines of life and into the new business of really living, and so this is it, like you said, like that's why you teach at CIIS, and it's why I also teach and why I create these kind of events. Everything that I do, whether it's in person, whether it's an intimate workshop, whether it's with my coaching with my clients and groups, or these large scale transformational events, is all for one reason: to deepen the conversation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, exactly. This and then this I'm sure that that you'll be speaking about this with the this amazing thing that Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm have put together, the MOOC, the Massive Open Online Course.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same work that you are doing from a slightly different venue, but it just kind of it's just amazing to see. We're talking about something taking place at a planetary level,
Yes.
and to be part of it is a thrill.
It is a thrill. So here's the great invitation, for us to then come together and create these, the shift in our cultural DNA, and really create the evolutionary shift. And that's the power of transformation. And just
Yeah,
to continue moving us, there's
yeah,
two more powers that we haven't talked about. And one is the power of interrelatedness.
yes, yes. Interrelatedness, and this would be the ecological insight that just to give you how I got into this the into ecology and to interrelatedness was I was a sophomore um, at Santa Clara University studying physics, and the professor gave a really weird assignment. He said uh, well, it's a bit strange. He said with Caesar's last breath, when he said et tu Brute, apparently,
Yeah.
with Caesar's last breath, how many of those molecules do we breathe, which with each breath we take?
Mm.
Now, that was news to me. That was news to me. That you're Caesar, he takes his last breath, and that I'm breathing not just sort of air, but I'm actually breathing molecules he breathed out. I mean, no, again, the power of science sometimes it's amazing.
I think about that when it comes to water molecules and how the same amount of water has been here, right? Always been here.
Yes.
So it's just changed form. So like every drop of water in our bodies that we drink, that rains upon us, like all of it's been here since the beginning of time in various forms, solid, liquid, gas, in all of our bodies. Like, wow. There were 70% of like history, and the
Yes.
ancient forms and all of it
All of it.
inside of us.
Precisely. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. And even for us to take a breath means, we used our lungs, but the lungs were invented by fish. So the fish are here. I mean, here's a different universe. Okay. This is Brian's universe. Okay. I make a fish over here. I make humans over here. I make the planet Saturn over here. They're all doing their thing, but not in this universe. The fish give birth to us. I mean, it's like, oh God, it's so thrilling. So, and the stars, right? The stars could just be out there burning. No. They give birth to us. So, but you know what? When I was first trying to come up with some names for the powers,
Yeah.
I ended up with interrelatedness. But the original name for interrelatedness was care.
Yes. Beautiful.
Because what to me is amazing is that we are interrelated, right? And what's amazing is that we care about one another. You see it so powerfully with a mother mammal and her offspring. But I mean, it spreads out, and the human being has the possibility for comprehensive care. We can care not just about our own children, but about everyone's children, about the trees and anyway.
And that's it. It's like, when we get too caught up, right? As we were talking at the beginning, like here's this world that just sucks us into this little tiny bubble. Everyone's living inside of this, operating in the, this culture of consumerism, economy, blah, 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 right? And there's this whole big world out here that we're still exploring. And when we get kind of sucked into that, how it completely sort of disconnects us from feeling with the rest of the world. But when we break out of that, it's like empathy, galore. Like all of a sudden we feel with, the definition of empathy, right? Feeling with the trees, and feeling with the planet, and feeling with other animals, right? Humans are animals too. Feeling with, everything, just feeling with each other. And when we begin to feel with each other, it evokes the deepest sense of love and care and compassion and nurturing, and like that shifts everything, right? Because if we don't care about something, if we don't love something, we're not going to give a shit about it, really, right? We're just going to live in this world caring about ourselves, and we see so much of that, and we see the devastation it's causing in our world. And I think it just comes down to that. Care about the planet and every living being upon it, and you make different choices. Get sucked into the little bubble illusion of, this little tiny world, and stop really seeing and feeling and caring about other things. And you live this kind of purposeless, meaningless life that just devoid of recognizing the interconnection that's always here. And there's so much in between. It's much more complex than that, but sometimes it really comes down to that for me.
Yes. It is the fundamental orientation that we choose. We choose on different levels. We're moving in one direction or the other there. Yeah. And the question can often be, for a person, care is nice, and it's what humans feel, but the universe is an empty place. Not empty. It's a place without meaning, and certainly without care. It's at best a neutral place, and so that's a fundamental orientation a person takes. I'm taking the orientation that care, and that might have even been why I didn't choose the word care finally for, when I made the DVD. I used a safer word, interconnectedness, because it's clear you can demonstrate interconnectedness. But what I personally believe is that the nature of our connections the nature is related to care, and that care.
Can I interject one thought right there?
Yeah.
Because it's making me think about homeostasis, and I don't know where, I remember either hearing you or reading something that homeostasis is the way that the universe preserves that which it cares about, that which it finds important. Is that right? Like it maintains that which it finds important. And so it may not be care in the sense that we think about it, like a mother nurturing her child, but there is a sense of care in that way where, the universe is here exploring and experimenting and learning, and then, woo, this works really well. Of course, we're like projecting our own things. But still, there's a sense of like, this works really well, I want to maintain it. So it creates sort of this homeostasis, is this way of maintaining and preserving and moving that forward in a way. So I feel like there really is a sense of care in the universe, with maybe a slightly different definition of care, but still that sense of, maintaining what is important.
You are really good. That is like so exactly it. Yes. And so it's that we can begin to see care in different levels, different forms, so that the earth itself, it cares. It cares. Cares about what really works, what's valuable. And it's not like, so like you say, we can use anthropomorphic language.
Right, which I'm sure we're doing.
Yeah, but we're not actually saying that the earth is like Val having ideas. No. But it's a profound level of analogy taking place. It is a form of care. It's care at the level of a planet, and we're another form of care. It's a human form that can actually become comprehensive. I mean, the horses have their form of care. So just exactly as you said it, right? That's how I see care.
Yeah. And it's like, so it makes sense. Like, even as you put these 10, the magic number, right, or not, together, that, when we think about transformation and coming together and shifting the cultural DNA, that without this sense of interrelatedness and deep nurturing, it's almost like, what's why? That's kind of like the why, because we
Yeah.
care, because we love
Yes.
this cosmos and
Yeah.
ourselves in all
That's
of
right.
the context.
Yeah.
Because of that, we are not, being forced to, not feeling obligated to, but like absolutely needing to, with every ounce of our soul, be involved in the transformation and the moving forward. And then how like all of this, then I'm going to lead us into the next one, moves us into radiance, right? The final power of our 20-hour interview.
But yeah, that
Yeah.
you were just such a clear illustration of radiance. I mean, it's just roaring out of you. I mean, that
I feel
is,
totally embodied. I feel
yeah,
that embodied.
yeah, that is it. That is it. So, I mean, just to say some things about it from a scientific point of view, radiance is really it's going to the second law of thermodynamics, and that is that all things. Well, a simple way of saying the second law of thermodynamics is that concentrations of heat disperse. It's that simple. I mean, simple. It's that profound too. Why should concentrations of heat disperse? We don't have a reason beyond saying they do. In this universe, wherever you have a concentration of heat, it is dispersing, So it's called the second law, and Einstein thought of it as being the most important law in the universe. So we're talking about something really deep. Now, the sun is shining because of the second law of thermodynamics. So to shine is to be obeying the second law of thermodynamics. The something that's not well known, but it's really interesting to think about, is that it's not just the sun and stars and lamps, right, and welding arcs that are shining. It's everything that exists in the universe. And some of the scientists who are listening to this right now are thinking, well, what about a black hole? But actually, even the black holes shine. So everything shines. But that means if you get up at midnight and it's a dark night, and say you're even inside and it's a cloud cover, there's no stars whatsoever, and you happen to have a rock, on your desk, you can't see it because you can't see anything. That rock is radiating. It's releasing light. So,
and our
bodies are they're exploding with light. But even if you have something that's cold, not like our warm bodies. So to me, this is still about what it means to be a human. What's the role? In terms of the second law of thermodynamics, it means that as we go through life and we are stunned by our experiences of beauty and of tragedy, and we're filled with feelings, we are asked to release this consciousness. We're asked to radiate. It will happen one way or another. Is it possible to give birth to an expression that captures some of the majesty and grandeur of what it is we're experiencing? Is it possible to begin to construct educational forms, right, that capture some of the majesty and grandeur we're experiencing? That as we begin to feel that, all right, what happens is that we begin to burn with this passion that is so exemplified by you, Val. You just can't hold it in. You can't hold it in. So it's like everybody in one form or another is an artist, is a creator, is an architect. We are, and this goes back to Thomas Berry's point too, we are a species that is to celebrate. And so the celebration can be in a ritual, it can be in singing and dancing, it can be in the construction of a new understanding of law, earth law. It can be any way in which this magnificent universe begins to express itself.
Beautiful. And it's, I think, as you say, it's like, all these powers, like everything is just leading us into this. So like once we really get it, which is what we started with, right? We have to kind of get it on this fundamental level. So let's talk about ourselves as universe. And I think by now, everybody who's tuned in for this is really getting a deep sense of everything that's possible inside of us. And once you get it, like, by the way, you embody this too, Brian. It's like once we get it, like we're sitting here going, together, And I think everybody who's watching that's here is like, you can't help but feel the excitement of that. And by the way, everybody, what you're feeling is radiance. You're feeling us radiating into you, and it's like creating this radiance in you. And this is how we all, just shine more brightly together, if you will. Like we're all like, really, emitting this light. We come together and we talk about the light. But here's like a real scientific way of saying, together we burn more brightly. Together, we're gonna take this into the next level of our evolution, of our awareness of self, and that, which life is calling us for right now, through this amazing power, through this radiance.
That's a great statement, Val. Beautiful.
So incredible. I mean, so incredible, Brian, everything about this. And I feel like we're all so blessed to have this level of awareness and to receive from you, you're such a gift to our world. Your passion for this subject, your work, your diving in so fully and wholeheartedly has brought this to so many of us, myself. Like I'm here doing this and you're feeling all this inside of me. And it's really been because of your passion and how that continues to move through me and how I'm bringing that to my son, and, he's going to grow up like Sagan's going to grow up to really like represent his namesake.
I love that. What comes to mind, especially with your use of the word light, is one of the teachings of wisdom from Dante in his poem, The Divine Comedy. And he's saying that the difference, there's a difference between material goods and spiritual goods. He's making this, Virgil is teaching Dante in the poem. And Virgil was saying with material goods, when you share them, you cut them apart. And so each person gets less. But with spiritual goods, when you share them, they magnify, they grow, like light going back and forth between mirrors or a number of different mirrors. And it's one of the great powers that radiance brings. That radiance ignites radiance, which ignites radiance. So it's this amazing multiplication of spiritual goods. And that's what I feel talking with you, Val.
Yeah. And I feel that talking with you too, Brian. And I know that everybody listening is feeling that. And, whether or not we're going to end this interview and they're going to go, do you know that we're the universe reflecting upon itself? I mean, this is how we do it.
This is how we do it. Yes. This is how we do it.
It's beautiful. Brian, gosh, this has been such an incredible journey with you. And I think I can't think of a more perfect way to begin this incredible journey in our summit, through this discussion we've just had. And I think, everything else we dive into from this point is, just going to be, people can hold this in their awareness and these different powers and really understanding how we're showing up. And so all the different ways and the different little, smaller topics we talk about within this context will be set into this much deeper understanding. So this has just been incredibly powerful. Thank you so much.
Val, and thank you. And I guess I want to say, as a way of saying goodbye to everyone, that that I know all of the people that are about to address you, and they're magnificent people. And what you have coming is it's like a whole university curriculum put together in a very beautiful, accessible form. So it's amazing. The people you've chosen, they're amazing. So have a great journey.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Brian. And I do want to mention, you're offering a gift, something that you collaborated with Carrie Brady, who's another one of our magnificent speakers and somebody who you have co-taught with, right? You taught together at
And still do, yes.
Still do. And this program, Nature and Eros, right?
Yes.
So we have this free gift that everybody can download right here. You take a look underneath the video, and it's this really beautiful article written by both of you, Nature and Eros. So definitely download that, everyone. Check it out. Also, Brian's websites are down there, so you can check out more of his amazing work. And I do highly recommend every one of your books, every one of them. I mean, I can't say enough, and even your video series are absolutely incredible. They're from decades ago and moving into more modern times, and there's just so much deep discussion, including a deeper journey into the powers of the universe. So just so much.
Well, yes, Val, and let me just say too, that for those of you that I think the absolute best things I have to say we have just covered. Val and I have just covered. So this is like the very core of everything I have to say. So you don't have to feel like you have to go and study other things. I welcome you, but yes, we really covered the heart of what I would love to speak forth. So thank you, Val.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. I know you're just being humble too, because your work is so rich and it really does take diving into it. So I'm still plugging you. Thank you so much for being such an incredible mentor to me from afar, and it's been wonderful to connect with you. I have to tell you, like, out of all the conversations, I've been most excited to dive in with you. So I'm just so grateful for this opportunity, Brian. Thank you.
It's my joy. Thanks, Val.